per the approved plans. Non-conformance of cornerboards, okay. So basically, as we see on the rendering here, in the southern end of the building and at the main entrance here, we had trim detail in white trim that went around those elements. Right now, it's basically brick that goes all the way around on those elements here. What we're proposing to do is actually put the trim detail essentially as it was approved in these locations. So the southern end of the building will be mostly a trim detail. The entry element here on 22 will also be the trim detail. The corner boards up above, they are a little thinner than possibly what was approved, but those would remain on the second floor. Non-conformance of doors, I'm assuming we're talking about the 3 doors for the stair towers, which were approved to be just solid doors. They do have a vision panel in them now. They just have their primer on them now, so they're going to be actually painted to match the brick color, because we want those doors basically to fade away so you don't see them. So they're gray now, they will go to the brick color so that they would be matching. Non-conformance of trim detail over some windows. I think the majority of the trim details that are on here are essentially as they were approved. There's not a whole lot of variation that's on those. Non-conformance of the columns. So what we're proposing here, as we can see on this rendering here, there's single columns that go around this on the East Main Street side. Those are structural columns that have been encased with trim material. What we're proposing is actually to put an adjoining column next to each one of those in compliance with the approved plan, so that those have a little bit more volume and depth, and actually put bases on those in capitals so that they carry this large entablature that comes around the building here. So that's being proposed there. And also the Cedar Pergola, right now the pergola sits on top of the entablature. That's all cedar, their material, so that sits on top of there. We're proposing to actually remove that and then set that within the entablature so you won't see it from the exterior of the building.
How did it look on the other?
It was supposed to be inset into the entablature. We weren't supposed to see, because it's right now kind of entablature, and then there's another element on top.
Could I see that again on the original?
You don't really see it
All right.
here. You can
All right.
see it here. So it's inside basically in the entablature, so you only see it when you're underneath that covered area. Let's see. Non-conformance of the chimney material, again, that's going back to, that was changed when the stone was changed out to the brick. Non-conformance of the first floor brick wall at arcade on the northwest elevation. So here, it originally was an open porch. Here we can have brick, stone bases here, and this is an open outdoor dining area. I guess due to grade and the proximity to the road, the owners decided to put a half wall along that area here. In the same brick material there, we're proposing to put an actual white trim cap on that to kind of give that a little more detail and give a base for those columns. And then going to the next one here, we have the non-conformance of the second story here, which is currently a brick half wall. So we'd be removing that brick half wall, replacing that with a baluster and railing system. So either be metal or a composite system that would be going on the front entry on Main Street, on the second floor of the dining area, and also on the north end of the building where the mechanical is. So that's being proposed there. Non-conformance of travertine and cultured stone in the southwest elevation. Okay, so the existing here, so we have travertine wall finish here, here on the first floor, and then we have cultured stone on these two elements here. It's proposed to leave the travertine on these two pieces here, remove the cultured stone, and replace this with siding here to match the rest, and also the travertine material so it wraps this corner over on this side. So get rid of the cultured stone in the exterior completely. Just get rid of one of the materials. Let's see. Actually, we just talked about the second floor deck, outdoor dining area. Non-conformance of the bay above the word restaurant. Okay, so, as it was approved on the East Main Street elevation, we had this bay here. What they did is they actually put a window underneath that we can see here and here. So that actually adds highlight into the kitchen area, because there's really no windows in the kitchen area, so that is underneath that bay, so that adds light into the kitchen area, so that's why that was done. Non-conformance of the two gables on the north, okay, so as we can see here, we have the trim detail coming across on this northerly gable here, but that was not matched on this southerly gable, so we're proposing to actually bring that across and make that match. So we have this trim line that does come across similar to what's going on here, so we have that constant band going around. Non-conformance of the flat roof and mechanical systems area. So that's on the north end of the building. And this actually came about during the mechanical design of the building. So we couldn't get all the units on the roof. There was nowhere on the ground to put them. So we had to put two of the units on that roof area here, which we can see here. But that will also have a railing system that will shield those mechanical units, so you won't see that. And it'll tie into the other elements that are around the building with the railing design. So you won't, right now it's kind of blaring, you see those units, but you will not see them behind railing. And we can actually put like a black mesh screen behind them to give them further visual break.
Right.
And then we have the street sign also, which essentially, when it went through the site plan approval, it was basically taking the size of the sign that was there when the grass was there and just kind of redoing it. I think what they did is they built this brick element here, and it kind of goes with the scale of the building, I think. We'd be trimming it out and putting a sign panel in the middle with some lighting on it, so I think that kind of gives us some interest and ties it to the building.
All right. Robert, would you like to respond to any of these comments?
No. First of all, thank you for a good presentation. I think.
Could I just ask you to just give a little bit of your background?
Okay. I'm an architect, and my wife is a landscape architect, and we design towns. Had practiced for 50 years mostly in Haven, Connecticut. I think why I was brought into this is that I was a close friend. I may have even been here for the comp plan. How many people were part of the 1994? We call it a charrette.
The 1994 what?
When they developed the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
You were there?
I never missed mine.
Earl was there.
So nobody was there except for you?
What's it matter? Nancy Tanner was there, I'm sure, Michael Cube, there were quite a few people, right? Dave was there.
Yeah.
There were a number of people.
No, I just meant in the
It was a whole community effort, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So, well, my point is that.
We can't hear you back here.
Can you speak
Okay.
in the microphone, please?
Okay. My point is that it was what is called a charrette, which is involving the community very intimately. You were there, and Dave was there. And it was an iterative process where the team, which was put together with a lot of specialties, including planning, retail, traffic engineering, topography codes, etc. A lot of transportation people, so there were presentations by all these different specialties. And then the team, there was a design team, began to pull together. There was also a polling where they got people to say what they liked and didn't like in parts of the town. Everybody put up little stickers. And so out of this, and then the team sort of put together, slowly presented, what was the wishes of the town. They got critiques, they went back, they redid it, and they redid it another time, and then they had a final presentation. And the reason they call it a charrette is it's an immense amount of work that takes place in a very short amount of time, just a week. But it involves the entire community and a lot of experts. So by the end of the charrette, you have a very specific, thought-out plan for the town that came from the town. It's really the voice of the community, and it's called the comprehensive plan. It was approved. So I was asked to come. I happened to have been a classmate with Andres Dewani, who headed the charrette. He's a firm in Miami, Florida, that's done hundreds, maybe thousands of these plans all over the world. And we've worked together quite a bit, so I'm familiar with his approach and technique and so forth. What came out of this was that for this area, there was it came out that there was a sort of milieu that made Pawling a special place, and identified different buildings. There was a rendering artist that was here that did renderings of the specialness and how that kind of specialness of the community could seep into projects that would come along that would give them identification. To make matters clearer, they included in the comprehensive plan a book called The American Vignola. Now, a little bit background on that, and I don't want to get into a argument over windows and all that kind of thing. So that's why I'm taking time to sort of back off from this to explain why I'm here. When you look at buildings that were built 100 years ago, you can just turn your head left or right and they look pretty good. And it wasn't by accident. A bunch of people made what were called pattern books. And so carpenters, they're written for lay people. They're not academic books. But they explain in there how you can build a building to make it look good. And so all these carpenters and building developers and so forth, whatever you want to call them, followed these pattern books, and that's why things look good. The American Vignola is a book that is still in publication, and it spells out very clearly, I brought some images if you're interested, how to make a building look good. That would pick up the character of the older buildings in the village. And the reason they included that is that it's very simple to read, it's very clear, it's aimed at lay people, but it gives all the information you need to do a building that sort of picks up the character of the older parts of the town, which probably used pattern books like that in their day. this building is a building that looks like, you know, money was spent on it. It's not a cheap building, and it just could have been so much better and not cost a penny more if you made it more like it had always been here, like more like the character of Pawling that was pulled together in this comprehensive. In other words, this comprehensive plan was not a thing that you pulled off a shelf somewhere and sold it to a lot of different towns. Every single one is completely different, and it's because the citizens participate in the process. This building is a very important building because it's at the gateway of the town. It introduces people to the town of, or the village of Pawling. This building, I would think, would want to be in the brochure that the town hands out to show what is Pawling. And you know the buildings that are on that brochure, that show the character of the town. So all I'm saying is, if the goal were to get into that brochure, it would have the character of the town. So there are certain things, minor things that, you know, probably don't matter, like the window details, et cetera, et cetera. When I wrote that letter, I thought I was doing something different than I was supposed to be doing, and so I was pointing out all the things that are different from what we approved. So what I've just gone through is more what I think I was hired to do. And so I think that in that this building is a gateway building, and in that it sets a precedent. I think you're crossing on dangerous lines when you, from what I understand, you agreed to follow these guidelines that were the comp plan. And it says to other people, well, we don't really need to follow those guidelines. And so I think it's important, and I think that there are a few things that stand out. The roof, which everybody, is a Spanish style kind of roof that doesn't really speak Pawling. As you call it, the entablature and the columns are all spelled out very clearly in the American Vignola, how to proportion those. You're probably may very well be familiar with it. It's a paperback. Anybody can get a copy, and it spells out very clearly how to proportion things. And I think if you had followed that, the building wouldn't have cost a penny more. I mean, and I'm pointing to you because I guess you're the
We
architect.
can't hear you. Can you speak
Can you
up with
speak
the
up,
train
please?
going? We have a.
The train, I'm sorry.
Please bring that forward.
Okay, I'll move
towards
closer
you.
to the mic. I don't have to start over.
No, start over.
So I just would say that this is a very important building, a very important site. Obviously, it has economic advantages to the town that I think anybody will disagree. It's just that it's in a location where it really needed it to reflect the guidelines, and it doesn't. And it could have. It's not like you put, you know, good materials on there, and it could have, if it reflected the guidelines, it would be a great building that could be on the brochure. That's all. I mean, I'm happy to answer questions, but that was just general comments.
Well, I think, just in response to that, I think that during the process, I think the owner has also learned a lot in this process. The message is clear that there are approvals in place for a reason. There was some circumstances in terms of COVID and all that stuff. We all understand that, I think, as we went through it. But I think the message has been sent. I mean, we've stopped work. It's been sitting there now for several months. They've lost their potential tenant that they were working with, understood. It's just pointing that out. I think it's, if we can get to a point where we can find a happy medium on how to make this building work so that we can move it forward and we can all enjoy looking at it as well as going to that restaurant and enjoying it. So I think that that's kind of where we are. And I think there's unfortunately some history here that's happened, but I think at this point, if we can work with the parameters we've been given, I mean, to your point, I mean, the roof, it was just an asphalt shingle on this thing that was approved. They went ahead and they changed the roof system, but this probably cost double of what the asphalt roof would have cost.
Yeah.
Whether that's right or wrong, I'm just.
That's my point.
Yes.
They weren't.
Understood.
I'm not saying it's a cheap building.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it doesn't reflect the town, and it could have. I mean, you could have saved money.
Does the board have any comments to,
Well, I certainly appreciate your input, Robert, and to have a professional do it is appreciated, and I thought the same thing, to be perfectly honest with you. As you know, I've been pretty vocal about this particular project and the direction it's taken. But I also want the record to show that I was the first one to say that this building didn't need another use variance to become a restaurant. I do want a restaurant on the corner, but I want it to go exactly how it was approved. That being said, Kurt, putting up the original approved site plan next to the building the way it is now only strengthens my argument. I mean, it is like night and day. So I'm gonna stick I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm open-minded, but I'm gonna stick to my guns. And I want this building to be as it was when it was approved because it is the gateway to the community. I love this town. I avoid that building as much as possible. I do not go by that building. I go Dutcher Avenue and around. Or when I'm coming north on 22, I get off and I go around. Because when I go by that building, it hurts my heart knowing that this building is going to be the gateway building, the first building people see. As I say, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to be open-minded, and we'll discuss it as we go further.
right now, I don't disagree with Lou. I mean, it is an important building, and I don't think I've really heard how this fits in the community character from you guys yet. You're proposing these changes. A lot of the changes,
Well, I mean,
amendments you're proposing are actually just doing what was approved originally.
Correct. I mean,
Right.
that's kind, I think for the majority of this, we're going back to that point where the approval was. I think the biggest thing is the roof. I think everything else kind of we're saying, yes, we're gonna bring it back to a point as much as possible to where the approval was. So I think those are issues that we're not arguing with. We're just saying, yes, understood. We're gonna go back and, for the majority of them, and just bring it to the approved point. I think the roof is the biggest thing right now.
If I might, intone, the porch, the entablature and the columns, if they took on the William Ware American Vignola proportions, I think that's as strong as the roof.
I mean, we can certainly look at it. Like I said, those columns that are there presently are structural columns that have been wrapped. We can look at that and just see proportionally, if we need to bump up the size a couple inches or whatever and double them up what we're proposing, if that works within that. I think that that's certainly something we can talk about.
Well, there are a lot of details in the capital and the base and so on.
Right, so I think a big part of the original approval process, because of the size of the building, you were given waivers for parking. I think across the board, even with the zoning board, everybody was enamored by the look of the building and how it fit into the character of the neighborhood. It was I think a huge decision, or it was a huge influence on the decision that everybody made as far as giving variances, the area variances that were needed, right? The parking waivers, the size, the scale of the building compared to the neighborhood, because obviously it's larger than anything within 1,000 feet or something, like until you get to, I don't even know, I can't even think of a house that's even nearly that big if it's in a residential neighborhood. So that was one of the huge factors. I think everybody kind of not overlooked it, but they were so happy with the way that it looked and how it fit into the building, all the detail that building had, that it was a huge influence to why it was approved. And I think Diane asked one night, would you have approved the building if it looked like this? I don't think anybody would have. I think it's in stark enough contrast with the neighborhood that I think we do need to take a step back. I think moving forward from here, I think we're going to need to have you guys submit a full environmental assessment form to reflect these changes that you're proposing.
What would that be, a narrative? We submitted that. Kurt submitted the narrative,
Environmental?
and he submitted all the photos.
He's saying an EAF, not a narrative.
What's the
Yeah.
point? You're not gonna get more information on a form than you already have.
That's not true.
Well, no, conditions have changed since the first time that we went through and did the first time we went through the environmental assessment form.
What conditions have changed?
The look of the building is completely changed. It does not fit into the character of the neighborhood pretty much right now. Like, and you still haven't really told me how it fits into the character of the neighborhood at this point for me to say that it's not a significant impact.
So where you're heading is to make the applicant prepare an environmental impact statement concerning the aesthetics, the appearance of a building.
Well, it might be more than that. That's why we want to review it at this point and have you guys resubmit that full form.
What more than an environmental impact statement could there be?
More than
But Ron, you don't need to, this
All right.
is not an interrogation, it's not.
No, I wanna know.
You do know,
I'd like to-
it's an environment, the seeker's gonna be reopened if they're gonna do that, that would be the approach. It's not an EIS, it's an EAF.
Yeah.
And that's look at 617, and that's the appropriate thing to do if there's a change in a project to assess whether the impacts are significant or not. And the first step in that is an EAF.
You certainly don't have to do that.
They don't have to, that's
It's
correct.
simply more
but-
delay.
No.
We're here tonight with a submission that was made, a narrative, a presentation, the photographs of what was approved, what was built, and the proposed changes to bring it back as close as possible to what was approved. Submitting a form, 99% of which has absolutely nothing to do with this building, is just a waste of time and a delay tactic.
Well, we're
That's
not trying
your-
to delay it.
That's your opinion, and that's,
Yeah.
we have an expert who's saying something quite different. With all due respect, you're not.
I didn't hear him say submitted a form.
Excuse me?
I didn't hear him say submitted an environmental assessment form.
Well, that's not his
Or
purview.
redo seeker. I didn't hear any of that.
Is it basically the roof, is that the issue, basically the roof? Is that kind of where we're
I
landing?
think it's the sum total, I think, really, when it comes down to it, of everything. Like, the board approved the building, and like I said, there was a reason why I think all the boards were generous in giving all those different variances and waivers, was because of how the building looked. And now, the sum total of the changes that you're proposing have detracted enough from it that it does need to be looked at again, how this is truly gonna fit.
I mean, it just seems like if we take the roof out of the picture, the other things that we're proposing to change, to kind of bring it back closer to the approved, they're minor in nature, kind of the things that we're either complying or making minor modifications to, in terms of, the rest of the building.
Right, and like I said, those modifications that you're saying you're gonna make were things that were just originally approved. You're actually just doing what was asked of, like, that
Correct.
you
So
agreed
I'm
to.
just saying we're kind of bringing it back and saying, maybe isn't just the roof color that is kind of the issue. That's where I'm just trying to get clarity on. Is it?
I don't think this is constructive.
No, I think it is. We're entitled to clarity.
Excuse me.
No, I'm
speaking.
entitled to speak.
I'm speaking. You did speak. Excuse me.
Okay, let you finish, sorry.
Thank you. We have an architect here who has stated his opinion, and, you know, you're just contradicting him, and that's fine, that's your right. But, you know, we're not gonna have I don't think you should have a back and forth on, you know, obviously you disagree, you don't wanna
Oh,
make these changes.
I'm not contradicting him, I'm agreeing with, I mean, basically, most of what we're talking about.
Okay, good. Well, that's good.
I mean,
The changes we're proposing brings this building back to what was proposed, other than the roof.
That's your.
That's your- that's what you
Yeah,
want.
As I
That's your
said,
opinion.
the porch is also.
The brick was previously approved. That
There's-
change was already approved by
There
the
is
board.
nothing in the minutes that we gave you permission to put up the
Let
brick.
me, Lou, you know what, those are issues that can be addressed, you know, and that's a factual issue, and that can be looked at as part of the process.
Can I say
So-
something? Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Are you guys saying that the bricks were not approved? We've sat here, the bricks were approved. That night in the planning board meeting, the bricks were approved. It's public knowledge, it's on the record. We presented paperwork that we couldn't get the stone. I mean, you were there, Rob.
No, I know, I was there, I was there.
So-
And I was pretty sure you could still get the stone. I think that's the only reason I agreed to that resolution that night. I don't know what the follow-up to that resolution.
There was no follow-up to the resolution. The resolution was made that night, and we started with the brick. In the very near future, yes,
Can I
that's
just
the
say,
way.
I don't think we should get, that's something certainly, I think that's something that should be looked at,
Wait,
because.
but with that
No, no,
being
let me-
said,
let me
Dave,
just-
I
let me
was
just say-
speaking, no, I didn't finish. With that being said, with the brick already there, and that was approved by the planning board, and it's in the minutes, this building can no longer look exactly like the rendering. So the best thing that we can do is bring back what we can and try and make it look as best as we can. And if you have any recommendations, Mr. Orr, I certainly would love to hear them,
There is a,
And-
okay.
because your report did not really guide us in any true way, but I'm willing to sit down and talk to you, and if there's a way that we can, you know, figure it out, because, listen, at this point, the brick was approved. We cannot go back and make it look like the rendering, Lou. We
Diana,
cannot.
if I could just say, that is not something that there's agreement on at this point, and it's something.
There's
that
not
can be
agreement on?
No.
We were all here in this room. You
can
can't say that it wasn't
You can say it
approved.
3 times, and it's still not gonna change. That's not the board does not believe that's to be the case, and there's.
Well, then
you
you're
know,
not,
you-
it
you
seems
can-
like
you
you're
can
not
be-
acting in good faith.
Well, you can be heard, and there can be a discussion about it, what was presented versus what happened. I mean, it's something that needs to be discussed, so.
If it was approved, why do you have to discuss it and prolong the
Because we're not agreeing that it was
bureaucracy?
approved.
We want
All right,
the
this-
restaurant
All right.
done, we want.
This
to
isn't,
use it.
Okay.
this meeting, yeah, we're not open for public comment tonight. You'll get a chance, once we get the EAF, the long-form EMF from you guys, and there will be a period for public comment.
Security.
I mean, that's where we stand right now. I think to move forward, we need to make that determination before we can even vote on these changes that you're proposing. It needs to be reflected.
Can we ask
In
Mr.
seeker.
Orr, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we refer to you about the necessity to reopen Sika and redo Sika in order to come back to some sort of
He's not a secret
determination?
consultant. That's not
Excuse
his
me?
role. He's not a secret consultant, that's not his role. That's for the board to decide. So he's given his opinion on the character of the building versus the community and the like, so.
What determination is it that the board thinks that you have to make?
There's a few, we're gonna have to look at it.
Pardon me?
There are a few different
They're
things that we're gonna look at. We're-
And this is something that, Rob, you ought to, poll the board and see what they want to do in terms of secret. And whether you would propose to long-form EAF, and that should be, poll the board as to what.
Yeah, are you guys, how do you feel about making them fill out another EAF so we can determine?
Definitely, I'm 100%.
Pete?
Yeah, because they've made too many changes without coming before the board. They just went ahead and did things without even asking us. That's not the way you do business.
Even with the proposed changes, it doesn't bring it exactly back to how
You're not gonna get it
originally
back.
designed. So,
I don't think anybody's saying it's gonna be exactly back. What we're looking for is, some discussion with the board and an agreement that what the proposal, either as proposed now or as refined, is acceptable.
So Rob, you polled the board. We're all in favor,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
All right.
Okay,
But-
then after that form is submitted, what determination is it that the board is going to make?
We're gonna follow the process, Ben. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
again,
Our consultants will review it, and we'll send you a letter stating, once you send that to us, if any impacts have affected seeker.
Okay, I've said it once, I'll just say it again. It's just total delay tactic.
Believe me, I don't want to delay.
There is no additional information that will be provided on that form for this
That's the
board.
point.
We all wish this was
We're
open.
not
If
gonna
you just would
gain
have followed the
anything.
plan, it would have been open.
But
even
you
if
don't
would
have to do
wait
this.
6
You don't
months.
have to do the environmental assessment form.
We
You'll
do.
get all the same information
We-
that you need.
No, we do, actually. We do need to.
Well-
The board feels we do need to.
Okay. Okay, you're not gonna get any more information than you already have on that form.
That's it.
Any other comments from you guys you'd like to add? Kurt, I guess you'll be filling
I guess so.
the fire master assessment form out?
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
It's like houses are supposed to go back to where it was
All right, what else do we have? on the
No
agenda?
public comment, but I'm a resident here for 30 years, and this adversarial attitude on the part of all of you people is disgusting. Disgusting.
You're gonna have a chance.
There is no
We're gonna have a public-
cooperation.
We're
You
gonna have a
are
public hearing
all
soon.
disgusting.
We're gonna have a public hearing soon.
You are all disgusting.
We should fire this
You are
person.
all disgusting.
Have you ever been to a
You
meeting
don't
before?
work-
Have you been to a meeting?
You work for us. We don't work for you.
So just
Here's
you?
people
I
that
just work for
spent
you?
$1 million on this building.
So that means they can do whatever they
And this
want?
gentleman's talking about ancient architecture. You have no concept of investment and construction.
You
But
are
what
the
an
embodiment of
adversarial bunch
bureaucracy.
you are. You
Bureaucracy.
especially, and you.
All right. Thank you.
Outrageous.
I appreciate your comment. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Right. What else do we have on the agenda?
I'm ready.
That's it?
You had old
Any old business? Do we have any old business?
Yeah.
Besides
I
the old business that you
make
guys
a
gave us?
motion, we adjourn.
All tapped. All.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Lou?
Lou, you in favor of adjourning?
Yes. I want to go outside and hurry.